Chapter 8 The Queen's Croquet Ground. Alice sees a big rose tree near the garden entrance. The roses are white. 3 gardeners paint them red. Alice thinks this is strange. She goes closer to watch. She hears one say, "Be careful, 5. Don't splash paint on me." "I can't help it," 5 says in an angry voice. 7 pushed my arm. 7 looks up and says, "That's right, 5. Always blame others." "Don't talk," 5 says. "I hear the Queen say yesterday you should lose your head." "Why?" asked the first one. "It's not your business to," 7 says. "Yes, it is," 5 says. "I tell him it's because you bring the cooked tulip roots instead of onions." 7 drops his brush. He starts to say, "This is not fair." Then he sees Alice watching them. He stops talking. The others look at Alice too. They all bow low. "Can you tell me," Alice asked quietly, "why you paint these roses?" 5 and 7 say nothing. They look at 2. 2 starts to speak softly. "You see, miss, this should be a red rose tree. We put a white one here by mistake. If the Queen finds out, we all lose our heads. So we tried our best to fix it before she comes." Just then, 5 looks across the garden and shouts, "The Queen! The Queen!" The 3 gardeners fall flat on their faces. Alice hears many footsteps. She looks around to see the Queen. First come 10 soldiers with clubs. They look like the gardeners, flat with hands and feet at the corners. Next come 10 people with diamonds all over them. They walk in pairs. After them come the royal children. There are 10 of them. They jump happily, holding hands. They have hearts on them. Next come the guests. They are mostly kings and queens. Alice sees the white rabbit among them. It talks fast and smiles at everything. It doesn't notice Alice. Then comes the Knave of Hearts. He carries the king's crown on a red velvet cushion. Last of all come the King and the Queen of Hearts. Alice isn't sure if she should lie down like the gardeners. She doesn't remember this rule for parades. She thinks, what's the point of a parade if people can't see it? So she stands still and waits. When the parade reaches Alice, everyone stops and looks at her. The Queen asks in a stern voice, "Who is this?" She asks the Knave of Hearts. He only bows and smiles. "Fool!" the Queen says, shaking her head. She turns to Alice and asks, "What's your name, child?" "My name is Alice, Your Majesty," Alice says politely. She thinks to herself, "They're just playing cards. I don't need to be scared of them." "And who are these?" the Queen asks. She points to the 3 gardeners lying by the rose tree. The Queen can't tell if they are gardeners, soldiers, or her own children. They all look the same from the back. "How should I know?" Alice says, surprised at her own bravery. "It's not my business." The Queen turns red with anger. She glares at Alice like a wild animal. Then she screams, "Off with her head! Off!" "No!" Alice says very loudly. The Queen stops talking. The King touches the Queen's arm. He says quietly, "I think, my dear, she is just a child." The Queen turns away from him angrily. She tells the knave, "Turn them over." The knave turns the gardeners over carefully with his foot. "Get up!" the queen shouts in a high voice. The three gardeners jump up. They start bowing to the king, the queen, the royal children, and everyone else. "Stop that!" the queen screams. "You make me dizzy." She looks at the rose tree and asks, "What are you doing here?" "Please, your majesty," Jew says in a very humble voice. He gets on one knee and says, "We try to—" "I see," says the queen. She looks at the roses. "Off with their heads!" The parade moves on. 3 soldiers stay behind to kill the poor gardeners. The gardeners run to Alice for help. "You won't lose your heads," Alice says. She puts them in a big flower pot nearby. The 3 soldiers look around for a minute, then they walk away after the others. "Are their heads off?" the queen shouts. "Their heads are gone, your majesty," the soldiers shout back. "Good," shouts the queen. "Can you play croquet?" The soldiers are quiet. They look at Alice. The question is for her. "Yes," Alice shouts. "Come on then," the queen roars. Alice joins the parade. She wonders what will happen next. "It's a nice day," says a quiet voice next to her. The white rabbit walks beside her. He looks at her face with worry. "Yes," Alice says. "Where's the Duchess?" "Shh, shh," the rabbit says softly. He looks behind him nervously. He stands on his toes and whispers in her ear, "She's going to be killed." "Why?" Alice asks. "Did you say how sad?" the rabbit asks. "No, I didn't," Alice says. "I don't think it's sad." I asked, "Why?" She hit the queen's ears. The rabbit starts to say. Alice laughs a little. "Shh," the rabbit whispers in a scared voice. "The queen will hear you. You see, she come late, and the queen said—" "Get ready," the queen shouts very loudly. People start running around. They bump into each other, but soon they are ready, and the game begins. Alice thinks this is the strangest croquet game she ever sees. The ground is all bumpy. The balls are live hedgehogs. The mallets are live flamingos. The soldiers bend over to make the arches with their bodies. Alice has trouble with her flamingo. She holds its body under her arm. Its legs hang down, but when she straightens its neck to hit the hedgehog, it turns its head to look at her. It looks so confused that Alice laughs. When she gets its head down again, the hedgehog rolls away. The ground is bumpy whenever she wants to hit the hedgehog. The soldiers keep getting up and walking away. Alice thinks this game is very hard. Everyone plays at the same time. They don't wait for turns. They argue and fight for the hedgehogs. Very soon, the queen is very angry. She stamps around and shouts, "Off with his head!" or "Off with her head!" about once every minute. Alice starts to feel scared. She hasn't had a fight with the queen yet, but she knows it can happen anytime. She thinks, "What will happen to me? They love to cut off heads here. It's amazing anyone is still alive." She looks for a way to escape. She wonders if she can leave without anyone seeing her. Then she sees something strange in the air. At first, she doesn't understand. After watching for a minute, she sees it's a green. She thinks, "It's the Cheshire Cat." Now I have someone to talk to. How are you doing? The cat asks when its mouth appears. Alice waits for the eyes to appear. Then she nods. She thinks it's no use talking to it until its ears come, or at least one ear. Soon the whole head appears. Alice puts down her flamingo. She starts to talk about the game. She is happy to have someone to listen to her. The cat doesn't show any more of its body. I don't think they play fair, Alice says in an unhappy voice. They all argue so much I can hear myself talk. They don't seem to have any rules. Or if they do, no one follows them. It's very confusing that everyone is alive. For example, the arch I need to go through is walking around. I almost hit the queen's hedgehog, but it ran away when it saw mine coming. Do you like the queen? The cat asks quietly. Not at all, Alice says. She's so very... Just then, she sees the queen is right behind her, listening. So Alice says, likely to win that it's not worth finishing the game. The queen smiles and walks away. Who are you talking to? The king asks Alice. He looks at the cat's head with great interest. It's my friend, a Cheshire cat. Alice says, Can I introduce you? I don't like how it looks, the king says, but he can kiss my hand if he wants. I'd rather not, the cat says. Don't be rude, the king says, and don't look at me like that. He hides behind Alice. A cat can look at a king, Alice says. I read that in a book, but I don't remember where. Well, you must go away, the king says firmly. He calls to the queen, who is walking by. My dear, please make this cat go away. The queen has only one way to solve all problems, big or small. Off with his head, she says without looking. I'll get the executioner myself, the king says eagerly. He hurries away. Alice thinks she should go back and see how the game is going. She hears the queen shouting angrily in the distance. She hears that the queen wants to kill 3 players for missing their turns. Alice doesn't like how things are going. The game is so confusing she never knows when it's her turn. So she goes to look for her hedgehog. The hedgehog is fighting with another hedgehog. Alice thinks this is a good chance to hit one with the other. But her flamingo is on the other side of the garden. She sees it trying to fly up a tree. By the time Alice catches the flamingo and brings it back, the fight is over. Both hedgehogs are gone. Alice thinks, it doesn't matter much. All the arches are gone from this side of the ground. She holds the flamingo under her arm so it can't escape. Then she goes back to talk more with her friend. When Alice gets back to the Cheshire cat, she is surprised to see a big crowd around it. The executioner, the king, and the queen are arguing. They all talk at the same time. Everyone else is quiet and looks uncomfortable. When Alice appears, all 3 ask her to solve the problem. They tell her their arguments, but they all speak at once, so it's hard for Alice to understand what they say. The executioner says you can't cut off a head if there's no body. He says he never did this before and won't start now. The king says anything with a head can lose its head. He says don't talk nonsense. The queen says if something isn't done very soon, she'll kill everyone. Alice can't think of anything else to say. She says it belongs to the Duchess. You should ask her about it. She's in prison. The queen tells the executioner, "Bring her here." The executioner runs off very fast. The cat's head starts to disappear as soon as the executioner leaves. By the time he comes back with the Duchess, the head is completely gone. The king and the executioner run around looking for it. The rest of the group goes back to the game.